Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for the Introduction to Energy Monitoring for Energy Savings webinar. My name is Beth, and I'll be your host for today's webinar, which means I'll be monitoring the chat window and conducting some polling at the end of the webinar. Today, we'll be covering highlights from our half-day seminar, Energy Monitoring for Energy Savings. We hope that after today's webinar, you'll be able to understand some of the basics of energy monitoring and apply them at your facility to help you save both energy and money. We want to thank our sponsors today, the Energy Trust of Oregon and the Northwest Energy Efficiency Alliance. Based on customer feedback, we know that customers appreciate that we're aligned with these two organizations, which helps eliminate any confusion regarding energy efficiency and renewables. Before I introduce today's presenter, I'd like to show you some of the tools you'll be using during the webinar today. To the right of the screen, you'll see several windows. Actually, currently you only see one window, which is the chat window. And at the end of the webinar, you'll see a polling window, which I will turn on. If you have any questions during the webinar, you can submit them to me, the host, through chat, and I'll ask the instructor them at the end of the webinar. At the top left corner of the screen, beneath the Quick Start tab, you will see some tools here which I will underline with a red marker. The first to the left is an arrow, then you'll see a text tool and a variety of other things, as well as a highlighter. I'll put an arrow under the highlighter. You'll be using these during the webinar on certain slides that the instructor will prompt you for, so you don't have to worry about that until he notifies you to use those tools. And with that, I'd like to introduce your presenter for today, Will Miller. Will is our Energy Information Specialist here at PGE. Will specializes in providing operational and analytical support to PGE customers who monitor their energy use. His area of expertise at PGE is in Energy Information Services and web-based power quality monitoring. Will is also a member of the Association of Professional Energy Managers, or APEM, and he has a BS from Portland State University. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Will.
Thanks, Beth. Thank you for the introduction. Yes, my name is Will Miller, and I'll be your presenter for today. Now that you've kind of heard a little bit about me, let's find out a little bit about who you are. So with your annotating function, can you place your name next to the option that best describes you? This way it gives me a better idea of the demographic we're serving. So if you wouldn't mind taking a minute and doing that, I'd appreciate it. All right, we got a facility manager and a consultant. All right, good deal. Okay. Well, now that we know, who you are, I'm just gonna kind of ask why you're here. Do you have a mandate for energy reduction? Do you need to benchmark your facility? Do you want to prove energy savings or savings for an energy efficiency project? Maybe you need to track and monitor your energy for LEED, which is Leading Energy Efficiency by Design Standards. Or maybe you're just interested in the sustainability aspect of it all. Maybe you're interested in this because of Energy Star, which is, in case you didn't already know, it's a benchmarking tool provided by the EPA, which has a lot of different ways to compare your buildings to others, and so you can get an Energy Star rating. If you have other reasons why you're here, please feel free to share them in the chat. Okay, here's today's agenda. We're going to focus on 3 key areas today. First, we're going to talk about the plan, which we'll get into specifically in the next slide. And then we will cover some utility terms and how we need you to understand how energy is being measured. And third, we'll be covering energy monitoring for energy savings or operational-based savings. So an example of this would be, instead of changing out equipment, you'd be looking for ways to change your operating habits to be able to get energy savings. This could be as simple as turning lights on and off, but obviously it's more complicated than that. And then we'll have some questions and answers at the end. Okay, so this is the whole plan, but we're going to focus on 3 areas, such as um, collecting and tracking bills, and then creating your load profile. We won't actually create your load profile because we don't have your data here, but we will be creating a load profile, and we'll touch on where you get interval data and how it's collected. And then we'll also review some examples of load profiles and spend some time reviewing those. So now that I mentioned that getting utility bills is important and that you should have a plan, I don't know, maybe your group might want to sit down and have a meeting and start getting your bills together. And because, remember, Will said to get copies of our bills. And so you make it an action item and you get your bills. Next, you might want to discuss where your meters are and what type of metering you have, or your options for meter communication, which is definitely an important part of this step. And then during this meeting, you get a call saying that there's an urgent situation and your meeting is interrupted, and your plan pretty much goes out the window because it was cold in a certain room and you have to go take care of that immediately. And so this pretty much brings your plan right out the window. Don't let that happen, people. I would make it a priority. It may sound simple, but collecting bills is important, and it's an important part of the process of having a plan in place. And it's just a great place to start. Okay, we're going to shift away from the plan for a quick second and review some energy terms. I'm sure a lot of this might be repetition for some of you, but I'd like to still go over them. So actually, let's go over energy, which is notated in kWh, that's kilowatt hours. This is defined as the ability to do work. Measured in kilowatt hours, 1 kilowatt hour is the energy expended by a 1,000 watt load over the course of an hour. So if you look at it this way, let's say you have a 100 watt light bulb on for 10 hours. This in turn equals 1,000 watt hours, which then equals 1 kilowatt hour. Just to kind of give you a quick example and refresher. The next term we're going to go over is real power, or demand. Demand is actually the rate at which energy is being consumed. It is measured in kilowatts, noted as kW. Utilities refer to demand as a value reference to an hourly usage rate. So to make it clear, let's say if you use 25 kilowatt hours in a 30-minute period, you would have had a demand of 50 kW during this period. It's sort of like driving in speed. Let's say if you drive for a half hour and went 25 miles, you had to be traveling at a speed of 50 miles per hour. So just trying to get you in the mindset of how demand relates to kilowatt hours. Okay, next we're going to take a look at an example of an electric bill. This is the summary page, which tells you the basics. It tells you the amount due and the due date. A couple other important items on here is how many kilowatt hours you used, and that would be energy charges. And then one other one you might want to take note of is the meter number. This is important for when you, for example, let's say want to sign up for energy information services, and you need to know what meter you're monitoring. It might be a good idea to even have your electrician, if you have multiple meters that is, go take a look and see what that meter serves and what part of the building it covers. It's good to know, and it's especially if you go in the hunting down a software or a energy information service package, it's good to know your meter number. All right, the next page is an example of the details page. There are many charges on here, which we're not going to cover them all, but as you can see, like the corresponding values of the terms we just covered are the largest or most critical part of your bill. So you got obviously the kilowatt hours over here, which calculated out is your highest part of your bill. And below that, you have your demand charge, which is 618. That's up there too. I'd like to also call your attention to one more charge that is related to demand, is your facility capacity charge down here. This value is equated from your two highest demands throughout the course of the year, an average of those two values. So it pays to look at your demand and know what your demand is doing. On the next page, there's even more charges and adjustments, which are explanations of on the back, so you can, look at those when, you feel the time is necessary. But for this sake, we won't because of time. But I'd like to call your attention to the graph on the page. This is a 13-month graph, which compares each month as far as average kilowatts per day on the left-hand side. So you're actually comparing January to last January. And this is just a good visual representation, and it's a good idea when you get this to see, if everything stacks up and makes sense. Also, you have up here your average kilowatt hours per day this year versus last year. I think that's important to know because obviously all of us would like to improve and get some savings. Well, you're kind of wondering, why I'm bringing up, stuff about bills and, who really has time for this. We here think it's a pretty important part of the process. We think you should, get a copy of your utility bill, enter the kilowatt hour data in a spreadsheet that's trackable, repeat this for, many years or as long as you think necessary. Even if you want to dig through files to find past bills, that's great too. However, if you don't have past bills, your utility may provide access to you. I know PG&E's website has a page where you can log in with your customer information and set up an account. You can group all of your meters and accounts together and then download the bill information into a spreadsheet. And you can find that at portlandgeneral.com. It's pretty simple. Hopefully you're not feeling like this poor gentleman here. Like I said, this is all just part of a process and a plan. This is pretty much the basics we're going through. So if you're waiting for when are we going to get to the interval data part, it's coming. Like I said, I just wanted to cover bills and tracking and make sure you know that that's an important part. So like I said, this is the first step of the plan, collecting and tracking your utility bills. So, if you don't learn anything or take anything away from this webinar, at least do this. Collect and track your bills. It's only going to help you in the long run. Okay, now we're going to move on to interval data. You're probably asking, well, what exactly is interval data? Energy usage data that is time-stamped in intervals. Technically, I guess you could say your monthly bill is interval data, but the interval is not really what you'd want as far as divvying into things. It has an interval of 28 to 33 days depending on the month in the bill cycle. So I would say a much more meaningful interval would be an hour or less, and then I would say 15-minute intervals probably all you'll need. It's pretty optimum. Next, you're probably wondering, well, how do we get interval data, or how does PG&E get interval data? Well, first, PG&E has smart meters in place out there in the field, and these electric meters communicate in several different ways. They communicate to a communication server. They use several different paths, so electric meters communicate via cell phone, maybe via radio, pager network. They use a phone line to communicate out. And if they're in a poor reception area where communications can't be established, they rely on a meter reader to download that data. Next, you're probably wondering, what's the deal with the gas meter? I thought PG does, electric only. Well, we do have some customers that ask us to monitor their gas for them. They basically do this via phone line and then export the data to our external or internal server. And then we also have some customers using submeters. These are usually aftermarket submeters or data loggers that basically monitors a smaller subsection of what your primary meter covers. So if there's a specific area you want to have metered that you really can't concentrate, that the primary meter doesn't show, submeter would be a way to go, and we're able to get that into our system as well. So once all types of these meters communicate, they send the data over to our data collection system, which is called the Meter Data Consolidator. And then from there, it is sent to an internal or external internet server. Also, we get weather data imported. So the National Weather Service, we have export that data over to the internal or external internet server. And then from there, it sends it over to the computer, which, via browser or, software and into like software tools to view the collected data. A service of this type can be obtained obviously through PGE, but there are other vendors out there also. You may have heard of Energy Expert or eManager. Those are services PGE offers. However, you don't have to buy these energy information services to continue to receive your current electricity service from PGE. Okay, we're going to do a little pop quiz real quick. I'm just curious if you guys will know the answer to this. What is the easiest way for you to obtain interval data? So with your annotating tool, please mark which answer you think is correct, and then we'll go on from there. Okay. All right, and the answer is, of course, look at your electric bills. Remember, start with your bills, people. It's only going to help you. Now, just to reiterate the answer, we have this example from the bill we saw earlier, and this is interval data only in monthly intervals, and even though it's a broad time frame, it's still enough to start asking basic questions. Basic questions I thought of was, why is November and December the lowest months? To me, that seems a little odd. It could be maybe the customer has gas heat. That's a possibility. Another question I thought of was, why is January and February higher than December? I don't know. Maybe they have extended hours or extra ventilation or more outdoor lighting during that time. It's anybody's call. Looking at patterns is really what's essential here. One thing I should probably mention is that interval data won't solve all your building's problems. The data is just an indicator of things that need to be interpreted. So when you first start looking at interval data, it will give you more questions and things to investigate than answers. At least it'll give you a good reference or basis to start looking. Next, we're going to move on to the anatomy of a load shape. Now that we have a general idea about interval data, let's take it one step further into a load shape. But instead of a year time frame, let's get down to an interval data in a time frame your building would benefit more from, a 24-hour period. And let's say, hypothetically, I have a building, and in my building, and in my example building, I have a base load, and that base load is made up of load from security lights, a security system, exit lights, outdoor parking lot lights, computers, refrigerators, ventilation system, fire alarm system, heating and cooling system, a time clock, elevator controls, a building management system, among other things. And so let's say all those pieces of equipment have a load of, let's say, around 100 kW. So I'm going to draw what my load shape would look like if I had a building like that. So, and it'll be a little more explanatory once I'm done drawing. So, like I said, I had a base load of 100 kW, and then looks like around 5 o'clock in the morning, my lights come on, and then around 6 o'clock, the outdoor lighting shuts off, and then around 8 o'clock, we ramp up, people start coming in, and the HVAC is humming. And then once everybody's there during the day, it tends to flatten out for a few hours. And then around 3, 4 o'clock, you get a little dip upwards for the chiller that just came online. And then around this time, people start leaving, and load drops off down to back towards your base load of 100. And then from there, during the nighttime, you got your outdoor lighting that comes on, and then your janitorial staff leaving. So that would pretty much be the look of my load shapes building. So I guess I just wanted to draw this just to get your mind thinking of, certain aspects of your building. What time do people start coming in and leaving during the day? When do outdoor lights go on and off? When does the HVAC system kick on? And what are the typical times that miscellaneous equipment go on and off? It's just good to know these things and know your building schedule. Okay, so now you've seen an example of what a load shape is. Take a minute to think about your building and how it operates, and then draw your own load shape. So with your highlighter tool, feel free to try and draw your own load shape, whatever you think it may look like, and just think about all your processes and all the things I mentioned, and give it a shot. We'll take a couple minutes for that.
Just to remind people, the highlighter tool is directly above the D, I believe, in Draw Your Own Load Shape. And I'll just draw an arrow here. Just click on it, and you can select the color to the right and start drawing.
All right. Good deal. Looks like we had a couple participants. Okay. Like I said, this was just to kind of get you in the idea of thinking about, a visual representation of your load throughout the day. And we'll move on from here. This next load profile we're going to look at will give you a better understanding of demand over time and its calculation into kilowatt hours. For example, you'll see down on the left-hand side, you'll see the usage is in between 300 and 400 kW. Let's say, just for argument's sake, that's going to average about 340 over 5 hours. 340 over 5 hours. The next part of the load shape, which is the bulk of it, that looks like it spans about 13 hours. We're going to say that averages about 1,000 kW, and that's over 13 hours. And then the last tail part of the load shape looks like it's about 400 kW over 6 hours. So like the statement here says, the area under the curve is the energy kilowatt hours used. So even though this is in kW, we'll convert it to kilowatt hours. So what you would do is go 340 kW times 5, which equals 1,700, and then you would multiply 1,000 times 13, and then multiply 6 times 400, and then you would add all these together. So 1,700 plus 13,000 plus 2,400 equals 17,100 kilowatt hours, or 17.1 megawatt hours. So it's, like I said, it's just a good general idea of, representing kilowatts into kilowatt hours, and, getting an idea of what your building uses per day. So now that you have an idea, or once you have an idea of how much energy you use and at what times, some typical things you'll find once you have interval data are early morning startup coming too soon, evenings shut down slow or late, weekend schedules are often incorrect, equipment starting and stopping when no one's around, that's one we see quite a bit, controls reprogrammed wrong, and sometimes even equipment failures. The next example is a 24-hour line chart. This is from our eManager program, and it is at first glance, there's many lines, and it's kind of hard to make sense of it all. But each line represents a day of the month, and so first look at the chart and notice the daily patterns. Like I said, take a look at this, and then circle anything that raises a red flag to you or looks abnormal as far as usage goes. So go ahead and take your annotating tool and circle that part you think looks odd to you, and then we'll review. This will only take a couple minutes. All right. Excellent. Okay. Good deal. Okay, you guys picked some really good ones. I'm going to say this one over here, that is a good guess. However, it's not really a problem. These days that bow out are of a weekday, and that Monday through Thursday are the days that when the janitorial staff clean up and then go home. The 2 days you see inside that are days they're off. So not necessarily a problem there, but that's a good, excellent find, because that's what it looks like there could be a problem to me. But after we talked with the customer, this is what we found out. This other good one in the middle here, you'll see a smaller load shape inside the bigger one. That is the weekend load. And to me, this is very strange, because it looks to me that stuff is coming on. It looks to me maybe the HVAC is on, but no lighting. Looks to me like there's something going on. So I would ask, if there was anything scheduled, an event scheduled. Not really sure what's going on here, but this to me is a red flag, because the usage should be at base load on the weekends, and it should be off. So anyway, good finds, people. Very good. All right, here's another example. So take a crack at this one. At first glance, like I said, this one's a little more busier, and but you can see some patterns. So take a minute and circle what looks odd to you, or what you think should be investigated. So take that annotating tool and go for it. Excellent. Very good. Okay, great. I'm seeing some really good ones. The last time we had people not identify, so this is great. Okay, well, I'm going to start over on the left, and this circle right here, that is actually a very good call. This is actually a school district office where you'll see these two lines at 100 kW that usually are around between 60 and 80. Um, Basically, that was from the computers turning on at night and then running their antivirus software and checks. The only problem with that is they could turn the computers on, but the software wouldn't let them turn it off. So they spotted that and then got some different computer software and found one where they could, shut the computers off while, after they were done running virus checks. So very good. Right up here, where you see the spike downward, I guess that was a power down from a piece of equipment. We didn't find out what exactly that was, but that's what that was. Looks like it came back online pretty quick. That's a very good observation, though. And then this one over to the right side, that is excellent because my question would be, why does it take so long for this school to shut down? Or, from 5 o'clock onward, it seems like it just takes a really long time to shut down and doesn't get back to, base load until midnight. So that's, very good observation. So good, you guys are getting good at this. This one you don't have to do, but I'll just point out a couple things that kind of raised my eye about this one. This is a distribution center, and the weird part for me was this part down here. I'm like, okay, what day is that? Well, that is a Sunday, and it's the only time they're shut down between 5 a.m. and 9 p.m. So that kind of brought some other questions to me as well. What are the exact schedules here? We can't tell. It looks like they have a big variation in startup times, and not only that, you'll see a big dip over here. What's going on there? We asked, one of the answers we got from them, well, that's break time. Well, I don't know. I mean, break time looks like it could be 2 hours, so to me that just looked awfully strange. But anyway, like I said, it's just knowing what you're building, should look like graphically is great because it makes, spotting abnormalities much easier. So anyway, we'll, move on from here. Okay, this next one is another school. It's an admin building, and I've numbered 4 things that I thought were worth noting. We'll start with number 1. Well, why is number 1? What is number 1? Is it a school in service day? What's going on there? This is actually Thanksgiving, and to me, I would find very strange. It's possible, who knows, the school could have had a community Thanksgiving potluck, who knows. But I find it very strange that, during Thanksgiving weekend, the usage is up that high. Number 2, down at the bottom, you'll see a lot of cycling going on. This would raise my attention to something is shutting on and off and is probably being very costly. We had an example of this, a few years back where another school got their bill and noticed it was, very high when it should have been, you know, next to nothing. Well, we did a high bill check and then found that someone had cranked the heater on in the snack bar up to 90 degrees. So during the summer, the heater was going on and off trying to keep up to 90 degrees. So, that didn't help them too much, but, that's just one thing you could find. You know, obviously, like I said, this cycling is definitely something to investigate. Up at the top three, you'll see a big dip or afternoon. What they do here, this is actually at this admin building. They make and cook all the lunches for all the schools. So here is their heating and cooking equipment going on and then shutting off, and that's the time they deliver the meals. So not necessarily a problem, obviously, but it's something that, caught our attention. And then number 4 is similar to the other one we just saw, is why are they taking so long to shut down? This, obviously there could be either, basketball games or not even really sure what this admin building does, but to me, I would be really surprised if if they needed usage up that high, past 8 o'clock. Okay, this next load profile is a little different. It's a bar chart where you have kilowatt hours on the left and kW demand on the right. The bars are kilowatt hours and the lines are the kW. Now, this one to me didn't look too odd at first. It looked, typical. I noticed on one Monday that it was lower, but then again, I looked at the date and it's the 4th of July. What was left on at the 4th of July? What came on? Was, how many office buildings celebrate 4th of July? I don't know. But it definitely got my attention. So it basically used twice the amount of usage. It's up at 4,000 kilowatt hours when it should have been shut off like Saturday and Sunday for 2,000 kilowatt hours. So that would have been one right there. Just another thing I'd like to call your attention to is the peak demand. So up here is your peak demand for the month. It's around 420 kW, and that 420, that is what you'd see on your bill. That is directly the demand value. So just a good representation and just something to look for. All right, this next type of report is from our Energy Expert program. It's called a Scorecard Report, and this report gets interval data in and then sends out an email to the customer. And it's basically a program where it takes in historical data and historical weather data along with today's or yesterday's weather data and electricity data, and then compares them in a 3-dimensional bin model, and then gives you an expected use value and then the value that you actually used. So, and then based on that, it gives you a rating of high, low, or okay. So in this example, looks like the actual use was 18,235 kilowatts, and expected was 16,295. So it got a rating of a high day. This also records the daily temperatures, the high and the low. You'll see up at the top, low is 24 degrees Fahrenheit, high is 41, and also chronicles your peak demand and at what time. But that is also spelled out over here in the thumbnail. You had a peak of 1,022.76 kW at 10:15 a.m. This gray part right here, this thumbnail, is actually a good representation of an indicator of, I'd say, your schedule. Each gray line, represents the start of your day and the stop of your day. So it looks like on the left side, they started up on time, but as far as ending when they should have, their hours of operation, it actually extended. So they didn't shut down like they should have. So that might have cost them a little bit extra than normal. One other thing I should say is It has a potential peak day indicator in which takes a look at the weather forecast and gives you an indication is if the weather's going to be high, maybe you might be at risk for a peak day. Like I said, this is just an indicator, but it's pretty helpful. Also below that, we have the comments page, which if you find something, some piece of equipment on or some sort of malfunction, it's great to note these things in. This person wrote, fans and boilers ran 24/7, temperature outside low 27, high 38. The building is holding its inside temperature well. So just to give you an idea of what this type of report does. The next type is a calendar summary. This is also from Energy Expert. It basically gives you load shapes for every day of the month, and when you hover over them, it gives you your peak time and your peak demand value, 2,290.68. Your total consumption, that's your kilowatt hours, that's 34,514. Your maximum temperature, 44 degrees Fahrenheit, and your minimum temperature, 32 degrees Fahrenheit. This is probably one of my favorite tools right here because it's just a great monthly snapshot, and you know, you can spot a lot of things using the calendar. Okay, this is an example of an office building using the calendar. You'll notice they're doing really well. They've got low and okay days. Green is okay, low is blue. Load shape's looking really consistent. You see one on the 4th, and that one looks a lot like a Saturday, and you're kind of wondering, okay, what happened here? Was there anybody in the building? Was there stuff going on? What happened on the 4th? It should have been flat just like all the other Sundays. And you're also probably asking, well, okay, Sunday has a load shape, but so does Saturday, and Saturday's a weekend. Why isn't that flat? Basically what this customer did was decides to add another shift onto Saturday, and then at the point they decided to add that extra shift, they rolled back their baseline, their comparison baseline, to include this. So Saturdays from the change from then on would look normal. You know, that load shape would look normal on a Saturday. However, Sundays are still abnormal. There isn't a shift on Sunday, but still, I would ask what, you know, Sunday the 4th is all about. Okay, this next one, this is a good one here. This is actually, you'll see, okay, what's with the yellow and what does out of range mean? Out of range means that this data came in when the temperatures were extreme and they did not have a data set of temperatures to compare them to. This was actually a cold snap, and the customer knew that when the the cold snap came, if you look around the 4th, you'll see the usage come up and stay up and doesn't really go back down as far as it should. This is because so the customer could keep the temperature in consistent instead of trying to fight it by letting it shut down like it usually would. So he kept the heat running, you know, at a higher level, you know, because the building couldn't recover to a normal level if it shut down in its normal fashion. So, okay, so this is the summary of our plan. So if you know, you take a look, make sure, and like I said, track your bills, and if you're thinking about getting some interval data metering, I think that's a great way to go. Know your expected use and investigate your load profiles if you do get some energy interval monitoring, and review those load profiles and evaluate the data, and make sure and document all your changes as well. I really hope that you guys got some value out of this. I had a great time presenting to you guys, and I appreciate you guys all coming out, and hopefully you'll be energy savers just like this guy on top of the steps here doing the Rocky pose. But anyway, it's been great presenting to you, and I hope you guys have a great rest of the week. So right now, I'll turn it back over to Beth.
Thanks, Will. And I'll be wrapping up this webinar here with a little question and answer period. Real briefly, I wanted to, before we proceed to the question and answers, I wanted to show you some of the upcoming webinars we have. We have Introduction to Calculating Energy Costs, January 23rd, and Understanding LEDs on February the 21st. Before we proceed to the question and answer portion, I wanted to remind you all that you can continue to submit questions to me through chat, and I'll ask them of Will. I'd like to draw everyone's attention to the poll, which I just opened to the right of your screen. We'd really appreciate it if you could take a couple moments to fill this out. We use your feedback to improve our webinars for the future. And now to proceed to the question and answer period, the first question that we have is, how do I get historic 15-minute interval data from PGE? Can I obtain a year's worth of data or more?
Yes, you can actually call me for that. I can get you that data file, or you can contact your key customer rep or your general business rep, and but I would be more than happy to help, so sure.
Great, thanks, Will. And the next question is, how much data does the Energy Expert model, PGE's Energy Expert model, need to accurately predict building performance?
It usually needs 2 weeks to start generating ratings. So after 2 weeks, it has a good idea of your use. However, I would say a year baseline is optimum. So you can start with the 2 weeks and then grow out your baseline from there. But I would say, you know, in a year's comparison is optimum.
Okay, that sounds great. And next question we have here from a participant is, how does the daily comparison in Energy Expert work? By curve shape or total energy for the day?
I would say total energy, well, no, I would say curve shape, especially in the new Energy Expert. It compares like interval to interval, and you will be able to see like the way it graphs. You'll see certain parts can be red, certain parts can be blue. All kind of depends, but so it basically compares interval to interval. I hope that answered your question.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I think so. Actually, could you explain to folks what the difference is between Energy Expert and Energy Manager? Because the next question is an Energy Manager question.
Okay, Energy Manager is a tool that has graphing capabilities, you know, and charting capabilities, you know, several different types and ways to compare and look at your usage. Energy Expert is actually a modeling platform. It, like I said, it uses that three-dimensional bin model to compare incoming data with older data and give you ratings, and then also gives you an indicator as to how you're saving and in dollars and kilowatt hours. Like I said, it's more of a modeling software that is probably more meant for people whose usage are somewhat predictive and maybe HVAC related, or you know, if you have a production line that's pretty erratic, it probably wouldn't be very well suited for Energy Expert. But let's say an office or a school would be.
And Will, is there a charge for using these services?
There is a charge for eManager. I believe the first starting off is $60 per month per meter with a $350 setup fee, and $150 setup fee any subsequent meter, and then the same monthly charge applies. And then $70 for each Energy Expert, and same setup fees apply there. And it should be all on portlandgeneral.com. Actually, we have a tiered system based on, you know, how many meters assigned. So feel free and look that up on portlandgeneral.com, and you can get the full price sheet, or even if, feel free to contact me, and I can talk to you and send you an order form as well that spells it out. My email address is will.miller@pgn.com.
Great. Well, thanks, Will. That's the last question. And I'd like to thank all of you for joining us today. We'll stay online for a while in case any of you would like to ask Will any additional questions through chat. But I'd like to thank you again for your time, and we'll see you again at a future webinar. Bye-bye.